Good day, Junior Tickies. I'm Mrs. Brimacombe. We're going to look now at Chapter 5, Activity 6. You are provided with the information from Sunshine Massage for May 2024. The business is owned by Liago Mokhadi. Required: use the information to draw up the trial balance of Sunshine Massage on 31 May 2024. Information number A. The following balances appeared on 30 April 2024. Now, this is not a mistake. The current month that we are busy with is May, but they've given you the totals and balances on 30 May, which means that the end of last month will be my opening balances in the new month. Now you might ask, but we are busy with the trial balance. How could that be then the balances in the beginning? Take note the different way in which this activity was asked. Instead of saying to you, here is a list of transactions, or post it to the journals, post it to the general ledger, and from the general ledger, post it to the trial balance, we are saying that here's the opening balances in the beginning of the month. And what you need to do is you need to update these totals and balances. You need to look at but what happened during the month by looking at the cash receipts journal and looking at the cash payment journal. And this must be directly recorded in your trial balance. So we are going to go through this activity step by step because it is a little bit challenging compared to the other activities that you've done. Starting with step number 1. And this is why it is so important for you to make sure that you understand your basics, classifications of accounts, know your formats, know where would assets, liabilities, owner's equity, income, expenses appear. Because if you don't understand this, then you're going to get this wrong, completely wrong. So we start with advertising. This is regarded as an expense. Capital, direct owner's equity account. Bank, a current asset. They didn't say to you that it is an unfavorable bank balance or it has a credit balance. Therefore, you can assume correctly that it is a favorable bank balance. Cash float, current asset. Consumables, expense. Drawings, owner's equity, direct owner's equity account. Equipment, non-current asset. Fee income and income. Land and buildings, non-current asset. Loan, non-current liability. Rates and taxes, expense. Rent income and income. Repairs and maintenance, expense. Salaries, expense. Sundry expenses, expense. Telephone, expense. Vehicles, non-current asset. Wages, expense. Water and electricity, and expense. So this is the first step. Now, we need to sort that out. Which of those will go into the balance sheet account section and which will go into the nominal account section? So if you think back of the formats, what we've done to this point, we said the balance sheet account section will consist out of your owner's equity, assets, and liabilities. So now we need to identify our owner's equity. And the first one is capital. And we're going to write that figure in brackets. Remember, it's the balances in the beginning. We have to look at but what happened during the month so that we can find our balances at the end of the month. Then we've got drawings, account number B2 in brackets, 48,552. We're done with our owner's equity. Now we're moving on to our assets, and the first one is our non-current asset, which is land and buildings, 240,000. We had vehicles, non-current asset, 180,000. Equipment, a non-current asset, 55,000. Again, we write the figures in brackets because we don't know yet were there any changes to those balances. Now we can move on to our current assets. Current assets, the first one we've got bank, and in brackets 50,136. We had cash float, brackets 2,000, and then we're moving on to our liabilities. And the only liability which we've got was loan, stand-up bank. Remember to write the name of the bank, and in brackets 200,000. This is account number B8. Now we're going to move on to the nominal account section, which consists out of all our income and all our expenses. Our first income, fee income, 302,354. We had rent income in brackets, 35,000, account number N2. Then we're moving on to our expenses, which was salaries, 105,000, wages, 34,000, consumables, 11,850, water and electricity, 14,400, advertising, 9,000, telephone, 4,150, repairs and maintenance, 5,786, rates and taxes, 17,668, sundry expenses, 9,832. So that is now the first step, classifying each one of those and then sorting them out in the balance sheet account section or the nominal account section. Now we can go on to the second step by looking at what happened during the month. And we're going to post that directly in the trial balance by either adding or subtracting it. So the first one that we're going to look at is from the cash receipts journal on 31 May 2024. So this is a summary of the cash receipts journal. We've got bank, fee income, and sundry accounts. Remember, sundry accounts consist out of these transactions. So you need to go through each one of those transactions and identify which account is involved so that you can correctly make the changes. So the first one that we start off with is the money column bank. From the cash receipts journal, it means that the business received money. That's why we're going to add that to the figure, which was the opening balance in the beginning of the month. So we're adding 101,100. Then we had fee income, the total received during the month, which means we need to add it to the fee income, 45,700. Now we're going to go to the list of transactions. Sundry accounts, it's said to you here, and you need to be careful. The owner increased her capital to 300,000. So this means immediately that is your final figure. She had 250,000 as capital contribution, which means she increased that by 50,000 so that she now has a balance of 300,000. Be careful with this one. We sometimes get this wrong. Some learners would say 250,000 plus 300,000 instead of saying, but that is your final figure. Then the second transaction from the cash receipts journal said rent was received on 31 May 2024. The monthly rent is 5,000 per month and will increase by 8% from 1 May 2024. That means that that's the beginning of this month. Now you also need to be careful because he paid at the end of the month. So what is the new monthly rent after the increase? So there are different ways in which you can calculate it. You can say 5,000 times 8%, which will equal 400, and then you add it to the 5,000 to find the new monthly rent. Or you can say 5,000 times 108%. Now you might wonder, where does that 108% come from? 100% is the original. It increased with 8%. That means 100 plus 8. So now I get the answer which I'm looking for. What is the rent amount after the increase? So this means that now we've received rent. Our income is going to increase. That's why we need to plus 5,400. Now we can go on to the cash payment journal on 31 May. It says the first one, bank, and now a question mark. It's not a mistake. It means we need to solve this. Now we go back to the basics, what you've learned from the cash payment journal. From the cash payment journal, bank will always be credited and the rest is going to be debited. So if I want to solve bank, it means I need to add all of those figures in order to get my bank total. So we apply that double entry principle of bank is credited, the rest is debited. Because a payment was made, it means that will have a negative effect on your bank balance. It means we need to subtract that. Next, we've got wages. So if I look at wages, the total wages for this month was 12,000. That is an expense to the business which should be added to the 34,000, 12,000. Then we've got consumables. It's an expense to the business. Again, we should add it. Bank would have been credited. My expense account is going to be debited, which means my expenses will increase with 23,487. And now you need to be careful. There it says sundry accounts. It's not the same as sundry expenses. Sundry accounts consist out of a list of transactions that happened. So we need to look at each one of those transactions and see where do we need to make the changes. The first one said the sundry accounts in the CPJ was for the following. The telephone account was paid 2,500. 2,000 was for the telephone account of the business and the remainder was for Liago's personal telephone account. Be careful now. You cannot say my telephone expense was 2,500. Of that, only 2,000 was for the business. The rest was for her personal, the owner's personal use, which means we have to take it to drawings. So we're first going to add 2,000. Our expense is going to increase with 2,000, which means now the difference, 2,500 minus 2,500 must go to drawings. Be careful now. We're not going to say minus. We are going to say the owner took 500 more from the business, so her drawings is going to increase. It will have a negative effect on the owner's equity because she took more from the business. The next transaction says the salary of the manager was paid. The manager receives an annual salary of 180,000. Be careful again. It says per annum, but we paid the manager her monthly salary. This means that we have to take 180,000 divided by 12, which means 15,000 will be added to the salaries account. Then we've got rate and taxes paid. Rates and taxes are calculated as follows. So this is now a bit of a challenging transaction. Property rates are calculated on the value of the property by the municipality by multiplying the tariff of 0.1162 divided by 12, which is determined from the annual budget by the municipality, as mentioned earlier. And then there's refuse removal 200 that should be added to this. So this is just testing a little bit your mathematical skills. So what is the property? Property refers to your land and buildings. And my land and buildings, we're going to use that figure which was given there, 240,000. 240,000 multiplied by 0,1162 divided by 12 means that my rate on taxes is 2,324. But that's not only my rate on taxes. We need to add the 200. So the total that we owe the municipality or paid the municipality was 2,524. This will be added to our expense for rates and taxes. Right. Next transaction. Water electricity paid 2,360. Added to your water electricity, your expense is going to increase. Purchase new laptops. Laptops is not an account name. It's regarded as equipment, so it will be added to equipment. Paid 1,750 towards the loan from Stand Up Bank. So if we made a payment towards that loan, it means that our debt is going to decrease. That's why we need to minus. Drew cash from the ATM for sundry expenses, 550 and 1,200 for cash register. So we drew money and we paid for things that falls under sundry expenses, and we put money into our cash register. Now, cash register is equipment, but the money that we put into the cash register is called our cash float. So again, apply the basics that you've learned. Don't get confused now. So two things are happening here. First, we're going to add 550 to our sundry expenses. And then secondly, we're going to add 1,200 to our cash float. Now we've done all the transactions, which means our next step is to complete the trial balance. This is just for you to remember how we got to those figures for rent income, salary, and rates and taxes. Right, so by closing the brackets, it means we start with capital, account number B1, and we've already said our new balance is 300. Drawings, close the bracket, our new total on the debit side. D4, debit. It will always be debited. There were no changes to land and buildings on the debit side because it's an asset, 240,000. There were no changes to vehicles. Vehicles is an asset on the debit side, 180,000. Equipment, 55,000 plus 18,900. So my new total on the debit side, 73,900. Bank, it's still a current asset because my total receipts is more than my total payments. And I had a favorable bank balance in the beginning. So that's why it appears on the debit side because it's a current asset. Cash float is regarded as an asset on the debit side. My new total, 3,200. Loan, Stand Up Bank is a liability. So on the credit side, my new total, 198,250. Nominal account section. Fee income is an income on the credit side. My new total. So you just have to close the brackets and add it together. These are my figures at the balances and totals at the end of the month. Rent income, close the bracket. It's an income on the credit side. Salaries, wages, consumables, water, electricity, advertising, telephone, repairs and maintenance, rates and taxes, sundry expenses is all regarded as an expense which will appear on the debit side. So all I need to do is I need to close the brackets and calculate my new totals. Telephone, Repairs and maintenance, there were no changes, so we just closed the brackets. We've already done the rates and taxes. Sundry expenses, close the brackets. My new total, 10,382. Now, the final step to see have we've done all of this correctly. If we take the debit side and we add all those figures on the debit side, it gives you a total 886,704. Now you should know the debit side should be equal to the credit side. So if I add now everything up on the credit side, it does equal exactly the same figure, which means that we've done this correctly. This concludes now this chapter with regards to the trial balance. And I want you to please take note from activity 1, the different ways in which it can be asked. Don't get flustered if it's asked in a different manner. You just need to apply your basics. It all comes down to that basics. Accounting is something that you need to study. And if you study those things, you can really get 100% for accounting. You can really do well if you just apply the basics. Then it doesn't matter in which manner it's asked to you. I want to leave you with this quote. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Have a wonderful day.